solution.
Yes, if you look at it, they looked at different articles on that. I'm not sure if this one that we did for systematic review. In box system. Look at clusters. Okay, so this one looked at again. This one looked at keywords and clusters, and then they kind of grouped it, and then they would kind of reference the articles that they included on. Let me share the article that we talked. Right. One of them did a really thorough systematic review, which was really good. And for the mental health nursing one. Yeah, this is it. For the mental health nursing one, there's another one on it. Yeah. So basically, it's thorough systematic. So if you look at it, these are all articles that they looked at based on certain keywords. That's it. So the system is basically, and then they talk about the aim, the design, the sample, the findings, and then based on this, they will now critique based on their own research questions. So that's the system. So there are lots of ways of doing reviews, literature reviews, narrative, descriptive, systematic, meta-analysis. There are lots of them in terms of literature review. What I was quite unsure of was because your sustainability and renewable energy or sustainable water company. So you're quite what departments are?
Energy transition.
Is that on a computer, geoscience?
It's on a geoscience.
So you're putting geoscience?
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing is that which was quite tricky for me was, so I just talked about what is critical writing, how it can be applied, considering various fields. Various fields apply it in different ways. So I'm in management, so of course we do more critical analysis, we do lots of reviews and stuff. Medical, some parts of engineering, not so much. They might be a bit more descriptive in their writing because they do more of experiments and stuff, so they're just explaining results and stuff like that. So it depends on, have you done any assessment?
Yeah, I'm on one right now.
Okay, so what's it about?
But this one is mainly a purely calculation based.
Exactly, so that's what I wanted to get a sense of. So you're doing calculations, but are you explaining anything?
There's a lot of explanation.
Yeah, so that's very descriptive in your explanation. You wouldn't need so much critical analysis, I would imagine, so because you're explaining what you have. Yeah, exactly, your values. But that's why I said it depends on what your assessment is, and it depends on your department that will determine critical analysis. But the truth is, broadly speaking, regardless of what department, regardless of what, when it comes, especially if you're looking at like what Sharon talked about, if you want to do publish, if you're publishing whatever journals you're publishing in, a lot of them tend to look out for the critical side of things as opposed to just being descriptive, which is what some essays, especially in the field, could take. In management field, if we're giving assessments, we want to see critical analysis. We wouldn't really, you probably get a lower mark if you do a descriptive analysis, basically, because critical for us, critical is part of the process. So it's not, like I said here, it's not descriptive writing, which would apply in some fields and involves evaluating, analyzing, producing an informed decision. So one of the ways I tell people to look at it is these are some of the skills required. So if you're talking about analysis, it's breaking down information into parts that can be related. So for example, this is what these people try to do. They looked at aims, they looked at design, sample, and they looked at all of the main findings. So you're breaking down the information into parts. This is more detailed because we're looking at a systematic review. But then if you're, I think what we'll probably try to do is you take it home and practice it. But here we'll probably try and see if we can look at abstract and introduction. So that's what we'll probably be trying to do, a critical analysis of just the abstract and introduction. So analysis, you're breaking information into parts to understand how they relate. So if you look at the systematic review, that's broken down. Evaluation is then you're looking at the strengths and weaknesses. So for example,
Maybe expose a little bit to that.
okay.
Sorry, what's your area? What's your area?
Mostly. Okay, mental health. So yeah, I think you're the one who's that.
Can I say that if you reach up their hands?
Oh, what? So what I just did was create out an article in the field that Sharon.
What's your area, sir?
Yeah, I've got you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Wait, I think price of no knowing the town.
That's your, got you there.
So I just tried to get, for those people that send their areas to Sean, I tried to print out an article to see how practical. I know the time is really small, but we'll see what we can do in terms of. So like I was saying earlier when I was trying to explain that critical analysis or critical writing is almost like a soft skill. It's a soft skill that you might not necessarily use 100% depending on your field. So I talked about, for example, there in just sciences, there's some of the assessments that are probably more calculations, and so you're describing your findings. So that's fine to do descriptive analysis. But critical analysis is, especially if you're in the management aspect, is something that is required. Communications, you will do a lot of critical writing as well. And it's a soft skill because even beyond school, if you're anywhere in work, the way you would apply communication, for example, for problem solving, critical analysis is very needed. And some of the skills associated with that is analysis. We've talked about analysis. Analysis is how you break down information into parts that can be understood and relatable. So I had shown them an earlier one on a systematic review from the nursing journal that kind of showed a breakdown. So that gave us an analysis example. Then evaluation is where you're judging strength and weakness. So that breakdown that the person has done in terms of systematic review, they would look at the strength and weaknesses of all those three parts and say, yes, this looked at this, but then it missed out this, created this gap, this looked at this. So that's the process of critical analysis. Then argument, of course, you're building the argument by looking at the weaknesses and the strength. Your argument is being built. And the evidence is that you have to support it because you're not an authority by yourself. Even if you think about the idea. So let me give an example of myself. When I was doing, it's here. So for example, when I was doing my PhD, everyone has different ways of writing. I tend to write as I go in terms of my knowledge of a subject, and then I read articles and I find out that someone is saying the same thoughts that I have thought about, and then I cite them. Because I'm not an authority by myself, I can't say, oh, I thought about it before reading the article. No, I have to use that to support my evidence because that is an existing evidence. That person who has published is an existing evidence because they've done research. They've carried out a conceptual or systematic review, whatever. So as a result of that, I have to cite those people. So one of the things that it's very hard to make evidence in academic work if there's nobody. So what we normally do is, for example, if it's something that is a new area, and that's why we're saying that's the originality we're bringing into the work, it will be built on the work of that had existed before. So what it will be is that it will be the gap. So it has to be that it's building on something and somebody did X, Y, Z. So let's say, for example, somebody came and noticed that every clock is round, but you're trying to argue that no, you can have a triangle clock. So you have to start your argument from what exists. And then you build it to your new knowledge that you want to contribute is the non-existence of a triangle clock. And then you argue why you think is relevant. And it has to be based on existing facts. So the thing about science is that science comes from somewhere. They don't believe in complete abstract of it's not, there's no foundation kind of. So you have to build your argument from something. So that's why you always have to support your claims. So like I said, even if it's an original, that's where your contribution will come from, but it will be built from existing problems or existing situations. So that's something that I wanted to, again, I think that's why a lot of students also struggle with. And that has nothing to do with foreign students, or it's the same local foreign student citations. And that's where we're coming in the conversation of you have to have reliable sources that you're citing. Because a lot of people write stuff, it could come from their head, but then they're not citing any sources. And the argument is, how do you validate what you're saying if you're not supporting it with evidence, which is reliable sources? So that is part of academic structuring as well. You have to support your argument with reliable sources. And I'm emphasizing reliable sources because, for example, a lot of students use GBT. I still struggle to get it. I don't really, in fact, I think this period has been my first time of just trying to, because I wanted to get some very basic examples for you guys to see. So I'll put on something that we can look at it. But one of the challenges with you, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using personally, because the truth is that everybody uses it, even in the workplace. So if you're preparing for employability by getting a master's degree or a PhD or whatnot, undergrad, whatnot, you have to be using the systems that are being used. But the challenge is, how do you use it? So I think even, for example, even University of Aberdeen, for those of you are RG, the University of Aberdeen, because I'm in University of Aberdeen, we have a guidance on how you can use AI. And what we tell students is how you use it. I tell them, use it for research. For example, you could, even for example, I just Googled some stuff in the next page and that's what I'll show you, but you can't use it to write your work, because first of all, it's giving you what is already existent. So anybody can get that information. So it's not your original work. And that's where plagiarism will come into play. Then secondly, it gives wrong references, citation.
Yeah.
And that's why I said for academic work, citation is very key, because that's what validates your whatever you've written in your statement. So if your citation is wrong, automatically that means everything you've written is wrong. And that's why people will fail using ChatGPT. So that's why it's best to know how to use it. Using it for research, I feel like that's a great way to use it, but do not depend on it to produce your work, because then again, it's going to produce false work, which could make you fail. So that's something to bear in mind. But these are the required skills when you think about critical writing. Some of the characteristics about it in terms of the flow of it is an initial context. Like I said, it has to be an initial context, and that's what I try to create. What is that?
It's our second first
No,
second part.
so, an initial context, and that's why I printed out an article. This is your context like you have. So you have to have an initial context, and then you have to, if you are to read this article, like I said, that was my intention, but we might not be able to because of the weight of it and time. If you read the article and you're supposed to do like a critical review of what this article is saying. So for example, I just finished a course that I did on performance improvement with my students, master students, and what we said to them was a bibliography they had to do. So they had to look at 15 to 25 articles, and they had to do a critical review of it. So what it is that they literally had to take the article, read it from start to finish, and then they had to follow this process. So of course, we now break down and identify the relationships. So if we go back to analysis, it's breaking down the information into parts, just like your document it had aims, it had objectives, it had the methodology, and it had what it was trying to do. So that breakdown helps you give a synopsis, an overview of what is the article all about, basically. So I'll give you, there's some breakdown on this that I could give you to look at. So then you consider strengths and weaknesses, which is what I talked about in terms of your evaluations and stuff. You have to, of course, support it with your evidence, which is what I talked, your citations and your references, very key. You have to consider the different points. So you're looking at what did A say, what did B say. So this is one key part of critical analysis as well. You've analyzed it, you've broken it down into parts, and you've linked the relationship, you've looked at the weaknesses and the strengths. Then you're now, of course, you have to cite that. In your process of citing, you have to consider different opinions or different thoughts. And different opinions and different thoughts could also bring about frameworks and theories. So, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs talked about the fact that people always have to start with their basic needs. However, if you look at job framework, that one actually looks at how people focus on. So that's you looking at different opinions and different views. That is a critical part, or that is a significant part of critical analysis. You have to look at different views. You can't just focus on one view. And there could be opposing views, they could be similar, but you have to kind of, like a comprehensive view of something. And then at the end of the day, what now makes it quite critical is after looking at that, you have to bring forth a sound judgment, which is where your opinion comes in. But then it's backed up by existing facts. So that is basically the process of critical writing. When you're talking about critical writing, it sounds like, yeah, that's a step-by-step systematic, but then the more you get to do it, the better you become at it. It's just like driving. When you first start, it seems like, okay, first of all, I have to understand how to even put on the engine. I have to know how to trafficate. I have to know how to, balance my movement and stuff. But then as you get along, you're doing all those things at the same time. as you're driving. So that's the same process with critical analysis. It has a systematic step-by-step, but then when you start doing it, it kind of flows. So this is an example, like I said, I got out of using ChatGPT. If you look at descriptive writing, it says, let me let you guys have a look at it. It's very straightforward. Climate change is caused by human activities such as burning fossil fuels. Sciences warn that it will lead to rising temperatures and sea levels. Look at what critical writing tries to bring in. So let's forget about the citations and stuff. It's a very basic one from, like I said, ChatGPT. I'm sure you can even find that if you Google it. Can you notice any difference from the descriptive and the critical? Hi, welcome. What's your area?
No, you be talking on distinction.
Oh, okay. Nice to see you. It's okay. Is that RG or? Okay, it's nice to meet you. So can you see a difference in both of them? So that's a very basic example that I just picked out. That's an online example. So this was supposed to be the task, a critical synopsis. So a synopsis basically is a summary or an overview of this article, is what you're supposed to do. So you were supposed to, which is a condensed assessment of a work such as a book or article, but then it's an article. So you're evaluating the content and the significance, and then you're not just bringing in your opinion, but then you're looking at an existing, so I bet there has to be an initial context. And then from there, you're drawing up your own opinion at the end of the day using the processes. So these are some examples. What is the text? Why are you reading this? So obviously that's something I always say, you have to have an intent of what am I trying to get out of it? Yes, it's a synopsis, it's a summary. So what exactly am I trying to get out of it? What are the authors trying to achieve in the writing? So what are they saying? And then what are they claiming that is relevant? So if you look at the systematic review, they talked about methodology, they talked about their findings, they talked about their aims and objectives. There's always that link. So the analysis is trying to bring the link together. How convincing are these claims and why? And then in conclusion, what you have to say what you make of this, and that's where your opinion comes in. But then again, it's building up from the existing opinions of other people.
How critical writing should.
So yes, this is typically how a critical, in fact, I think the best one to use is look at the character required skills for it. These are the required skills for critical writing. So exactly what I've explained, this is the process. The first thing is you have to have your context, and then you have to break down the information into parts. Mental health, I think if you open the mental health, it will kind of give you mental health. If you just open and keep clicking mental health, for mental health, did a systematic review. So I want you to have a look. You can show him the mental health. Yes. So that is a systematic review, and there are lots of it that has been done. So that is breaking down the information into parts that has been done in a very systematic way. So when you do that, you're breaking down the information. So if you're reading this article, you're expected to break down the information. You could have a jotter where you do that. And then the question of what am I trying to find will help you to know what information are you trying to break down. So for example, if you're looking at if your work is trying to say that, okay, I'm trying to understand how humans make decisions in terms of getting a job, and then I'm looking at how many articles use Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a theory, or I'm trying to look at what theories have been used to argue that. It means when I take up an article, I'm looking at what theories have been used to argue that. That's at the back of my head. So when I'm breaking down the information, I'm breaking down information that links back to the context of what theories. So it could be, yes, from those sources. So it could be that I first of all want to understand what was the question they were asking first. Then I look at what theories did they use to try and analyze and answer those questions. So I'm breaking it down. Then I look at what were their findings. Does it answer my question or not? So that analysis process is good. The evaluation is where you look at the strength and the weakness of the article. Did it answer their question? Is it answering your question? Is it making you understand that there is a gap in the literature because something is still missing? You have to identify a strength and weakness. And then you have to build your argument from that. So that's you building your argument based on the critical writing subject that you're looking at. So if your assessment is on a certain question, your argument will build towards that question. And then your evidence, if you have to back it up, like I said, you have to support it with existing sources. But then part of the critical experience is you also have to bring in your own thoughts and opinions. A said this, B said this, C said this. Based on this argument, the weakness, the strength, I think this.
So do you reference that after?
Yes, because your thoughts is coming from I'm in support, or I'm in support of A, or I don't accept A or B. But like I said, like he argue, what if it doesn't exist? So your argument would be that A, B, C have good strong points. However, there is a gap in the literature because no one has looked at this angle. Do you see what I mean? So that will still be very valid. So unfortunately, because of the time, you wouldn't be able to do the real exercise, but I think you should just probably take it home and try it.
Can we get
Yes, I've sent it to Sharon, so you can definitely get it.
soft copy?
Yes. So
Thank
you can definitely get it. You're welcome. But that me done in my second.
Thank you.
Yes. So my problem is that you should be reading that to see if it makes sense. But yeah, in terms of systematic, yeah. Question.
By any scenario, maybe one of the assignments.
I wish it was longer, just like see how I said it was quite difficult. Like, for example, I run tutorials 1 hour. It's so difficult to get. You do case studies. Getting them to read a case study in 20 minutes takes a lot. It's a small time. So I wish we could, we'll ask Sharon if there's something that we can do in terms of, yeah, it will make more sense in terms of the practicality of looking at what you're working on, yeah, your assessment. So maybe we could have that conversation and keep arranged. That would be able to share. The request for practicality in terms of looking at some of the assessments to see how.
Yes, that's the plan, right? So,
But there's no time to do that.
no, there's, after your talk, there's 20 minutes.
Well, you give me that fire.
Anyway, there's, the way I did was, after your talk, there's practical. That's what I said to you.
Okay, so that 20 minutes.
Yes, if you look.
So that 20 minutes is not part of my 30 minutes. talk.
Yes.
Okay. So, but I don't know how 20 minutes would work out in terms of.
And just rapid stuff. If you have any of your assignments, or bring it out and see. And yes, bring it out and let's see how it's going to work. But what I said.
Okay, because that's why I just tweeted out this stuff.
What? Let me see.
Every time.
Yeah, what I said was 105 to 135.
Yeah.
Physical writing assessment, lecturer, 135 to 155. Practical critical writing exercise.
Okay, so you can do
So
that then.
I think if you have to clap for her, she just do that there. So I don't know how we should do it. Yeah, so someone just called you now. So
Okay.
accept it and let him tell us what to do now. He's coming down, he's coming around downstairs.
It's downstairs.
I think it's around so my laptop, technically it's too cold. So that's working on. So my lab 20 minutes.
But I'm not sure if everyone, you've just done an assessment, but it's more statistics calculations though.
So I have one coming up that is for a balance study that is the deadline is for.
Okay, so it's more a.
Yes, that's the problem. It's for them.
Okay, that one involves
Yes,
critical
I'm
thinking.
not sure.
Okay. So what you could do is you could practice with this one, this sustainability transition.
The problem with this particular one is, I don't know if somebody else has something else we can look at. The problem with this biomass is it is purely descriptive. It's not
Exactly.
just descriptive, it's descriptive in line with the size. So there's no space for
For critical, yeah,
irreactivity is based on
your own extra, yeah, exactly, not necessarily, yeah. So, but like I said, which I said at the beginning, depends on your area, depends on your field. Some fields or some areas will require more critical asset analysis in their work than some other fields. Some other fields will be more descriptive based on your results, experiments. But then look at critical analysis or critical writing as a soft skill. that you require even beyond the workplace and beyond the school environment, academic environment. Because if you're talking working in an organization where you're working with a team, for example, on a project and you have to do problem solving, you also have to be quite critical with whatever results you're getting. And then that could also be embedded into your report, for example. So again, the only difference is then when you're doing it for a workplace, you're not necessarily writing, Dr. Aacdemic said XYZ in your report. You might have your references at the end, but then you're not necessarily citing in your report when it comes to a workplace report and production. But then again, yeah, depends on, like Shemun talked about, even publications you could do even while you're working. You don't have to be an academic. There are people who work and then they want to inform policy, so they do publications. People who are in the medical field, they do still do publications as well. So that still requires
What's the essence of publication?
for academic, it's what guarantees your, first of all, let's look at it, not apart from career progression and work progression. It is something that, this is what science talks about in terms of when you talk about evidence of something, what you publish it because you've done research on it. So the publication is where people gain access to this information. Interestingly, most of these academic journals are in sites that not a lot of people have access to. But then when, let's look at government policies, a lot of those government policies are informed by this research and work done by academics. So definitely that is the key reason or the significant for publication. Publication is trying to research on something, bring out the findings, and then as a result of that, give direction on how people should do certain things. So it's very important. And medical field is a field where there's a lot of research being done. So that's why you find out that even people who are in the medical field outside being in school, they still do a lot of, because it's research, it's all about research. You have to research to find findings and to find a cure. It's like solution. So you have to research for it. Academics, on the other end, it's part of their life journey in terms of you have to publish and then it helps with your promotions and things like that. But for in terms of people gaining access to it, it's information that is needed. So if, for example, in your area of looking at sustainability transition, when you do a research and you identify a problem and you find a solution, by publishing, that's how people get to know what the process was. So that's when methodology comes into play. Don't know if anybody's doing anything on methodology because I didn't touch anything. So methodology is very significant because it tells the process through which you did your research. So it is very key in terms of the structure and the breakdown of how you carried out that research and in terms of understanding the process. So yeah, that's why publication.
And maybe to add what you have said, when I was looking at this one, all the LLM that they are using, AI they are using, this is the paper that they are stealing all the secret from. So just to buttress what you have said, all the LLM, the AI that they are using, the ChatGPT, it's from this paper, what the guy did and all of that. So reading, just to inform you that when you write paper, right, it can inform NHS, it can inform most of the government, the next step they are going, all of that. So how do we make it more practical? Because the way my people are looking now, so who can bring essay out? And so we won't put it on the that. So what can you bring the question? Unless
yeah, we just analyze, we don't break it down in terms of
okay. I don't record, so let's just
I'm not going into details of it.
please.
Okay, sorry.
So that everybody can learn from it, right?
That's it. Well, the question is down.
This is what is expected of which one is best.
Does it work? It should work. Let's see. Yeah, so let's see how we can answer this.
Where's the question?
Yeah, that's the brief.
Organizations that are including operation in non-market.